conference, perhaps the largest that we've had on any topic. And it's great to be back here at Finletter. I'm Congressman Brendan Boyle. Grew up in this neighborhood. Actually, while I didn't attend Finletter, used to play stickball right outside here. I don't know if the square is still painted on one of the sides of the walls, but it is always wonderful to be back here. This also happens to be a sentimental home for me, because this happens to be a polling location as well. And it was here 10 years ago that I stood on my feet outside for 13 consecutive hours asking people who vote here to vote for me. And I'm very happy that 81% of those who vote in this location voted for me in a four-way race. Right. Part of the reason why we're able to pull off a major upset victory. So I am here now, though, in a different reason, and joined by a large number of individuals, local elected officials, school leaders, including a special guest who made the trip from Washington, D.C. I will introduce her in just a few moments, but let me just say for now to Randy Weingarten, a special welcome to Philadelphia, and thank you for being here. Randy and I did an event together several years ago now, in the same neighborhood at Lowell Elementary, where I happen to have attended kindergarten, and it was about school facilities and the problems that we continue to have chronically with our older school facilities here in the city of Philadelphia. As we toured Lowell that day, and I had toured it on a previous occasion, I will never forget being in one classroom that was so hot. In the middle of a winter day, you had all the windows open because it felt like a sauna in there. And yet then when you stepped outside to the hallway, you needed a heavy winter coat because it felt exactly as it felt outside. In the basement, there were pipes that were exposed that if you touched one, you would burn yourself. And sure enough, something like that had happened at a different school only a few weeks prior. The teachers, working with the Philadelphia Federation of Teachers, had developed an app, which I believe is still in use, so that the teachers can use to identify these problems in facilities that need to be fixed. Now look, when I was a state legislator, I talked about the fact Harrisburg needed to do more, and they do. However, the reality is, e pluribus unum, out of many one, we are the United States of America. When we're talking about facilities that are well over a century old, and plenty of them in our city, as one of the oldest states in the Union, the reality is it's only Washington, D.C. that has those kinds of resources to meet the enormity of this challenge. So on this, the first day of school here in Philadelphia, I am repeating my call, the call that a number of us have made for Washington, D.C. to do more for our school facilities. Now, to be clear, in recent years, under this administration, we've had remarkable successes. The bipartisan infrastructure bill is one of a number of major pieces of legislation touching every walk of life. Frankly, it's a record of accomplishment that I think we haven't seen the likes of which since 1965. When we talk about infrastructure, however, too often we are talking about roads and bridges and rail. And look, those things are incredibly important. Yep. I fought for them. We have now had the greatest investment in our nation's infrastructure since the Eisenhower Infrastructure Act of the 1950s. The greatest investment in Amtrak ever. So those things are important. But we can't just limit ourselves when thinking of infrastructure to roads and bridges and rail. This is part of our infrastructure. Our elementary schools and middle schools and high schools and where our kids learn. If a kid is in a classroom or in this auditorium, as I'm already sweating, it's pretty hard to learn when you can feel the temperatures to a great degree on either extreme, whether it's the heat and humidity as it is now, still in the summer, or what we will no doubt be experiencing come January and further into this winter. So we have to do more. We cannot just rest on the Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill or the American Rescue Plan or the Rebuild Schools Act. We need to look toward now and the immediate future for what we are going to do to finish the job. So, as you can see, gathered, we have a lot of speakers, even more who are standing behind me as well. I'm going to leave it to Arthur Steinberg, who is the wonderful president here of our teachers union in our city and our Commonwealth. He will, I think, take the opportunity to introduce a number of, or just mention those specific union leaders who were standing behind me. But first, since he is the head of Philadelphia Schools and has been nice enough to welcome us here to Finletter, let me introduce Dr. Tony Watlington, the superintendent of the Philadelphia School District.
Thank you, Congressman. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you, Congressman. It was interesting as a history teacher to hear that lesson about infrastructure since the 1950s and the Eisenhower and the Lyndon Johnson administration. So thank you for kicking off our history classes at Finletter this morning. I also want to say a very special thank you to all of the folks who were out early this morning. We began the day, Congressman Boyle, at the Shallcross Bus Garage, and then got right over to Edmonds to welcome our young people back to what we expect will be a great school year. I'm joined by two school board members, Board Member Sarah Ashley Andrews and Board Member Cheryl Harper. They've been with us all day. Please give them a round of applause. I want to get right into it and certainly thank President Steinberg for the opportunity, and looking forward to hearing from AFT President Randy Weingartner. In the School District of Philadelphia, the place where this whole experiment in democracy began in 1776, nearly 250 years ago, a very old city, a historic city where the average age of our school buildings, Congressman, is approaching 75 years. There's a number of school facilities here that are anywhere in the range of 100 to 120 plus years old. And we know that part of the reasons that we have those conditions where we don't have adequate air conditioning in some 63 schools still across the district, although we installed 199 additional air conditioners this summer. We still have 66 schools that don't have appropriate air conditioning, such that in the warm months when we expect the temperature to climb greater than 85 degrees in the early mornings, which we expect to happen this week, we unfortunately have to send kids home early, which is certainly not a good thing in 2024. Notwithstanding the improvements that have been made, I do want to note that there's a role for the federal government, and we absolutely agree with the congressman. Even though the 10th Amendment says those powers not given to the federal government reside with the states, and we have 50 different state departments of education and 14,000 school districts, we think there's still a role for infrastructure development with regard to the federal government supporting public education. Let me give one example. When the COVID pandemic hit, President Weingarten, in March of 2020, this is one of those school districts that received those federal ARPA dollars to the tune of $1.1 billion. What did this district do with it? It did lots of things with that. First, I want to talk about COVID academic recovery. When Harvard and Stanford researchers completed the first post-COVID study in February of this year, based on 2022-23 test score results, they found that the School District of Philadelphia had the best 3rd through 8th grade math rebound performance among all the big city, what we call NAEP tutor school districts. That is really significant. On the 3rd through 8th grade reading side, again, this is 2022-23 data. We don't have the verified data for 23-24 yet. this school district had the second best, Congressman Boyle, second best 3rd through 8th grade reading rebound performance, second only to the Chicago Public Schools. It speaks to the fact that this district put those dollars to good use. Not only did we have that result, we know that in the past year, student attendance has gone up. We know in the past year that the 4-year graduation rate has gone up. And we know that in the past year, the number of kids who drop out of school has gone down. And so we're really excited about that. On the facility side, with that $1.1 billion in federal funding, we completed 61 capital projects, including roof replacements, HVAC system upgrades, other renovations, 147 classroom modernization projects across 11 schools. We completed a number of other environmental issues. We attended to a number of environmental issues to include asbestos abatement, not surprising given the age of our school buildings. And we increased the number of LEED certified schools to 110. When the federal government thinks about public education in a country that figured out how to create the world's largest economy, the strongest military, and along with these great unions, help build the middle class, we must continue to request that the federal government continue to invest in our public education infrastructure. We also were able to address student social and emotional health and wellness with those dollars. So I'm excited to stand with Congressman Boyle, our board members, our principal, very fine principal, President Weingarten, and AFT President Weingarten and PFT President Steinberg. I'm happy to stand with you to push for more dedicated funding because the young people of Philadelphia, as well as other young people across this country, absolutely deserve additional investment. Good morning and thank you.
Thank you. Well said.
Let me also just, before bringing up our next guest, and frankly our special guest who, again, really went above and beyond to come from Washington, D.C. this morning for this event. But first, I want to give credit to you, Superintendent. It hasn't always been the case in the city that you have federal elected official, you'll hear from the later state elected official, local elected official, superintendent representing the school district, and the teachers' unions all on the same side, all on the same page. It shows the unity of this group, but also the importance and significance of this issue. And now, without further ado, someone who is a friend of mine, and we've gotten to know each other over the years and working together and fighting the good fight together. The teachers and kids of America are very lucky that we have her on the job, and that is the president of the AFT, Randy Weingarten.
Randy.
You know, Mr. Superintendent, I was taking notes as you said that about the Stanford and Harvard study, because constantly, and, you know, Congressman, we've talked about this all the time, there's always the question about what works. And the American Rescue Plan worked. Absolutely. And if we remember back to January 2021, the country was in terrible shape. Millions of people were unemployed. The lines to get food from food banks, the supply chains were completely broken. And we had beforehand, a former president who every other day changed their mind about what it would take to actually help the country recover. We had just gone through a coup. The country was in really bad shape. And I want to go back to what people did in Philadelphia. Look, the schools, the ventilation problems, we knew about the ventilation problems well before COVID, but they were exacerbated during COVID. I say this as an asthmatic, because we knew COVID was a respiratory disease. And if you don't have good ventilation in schools or in buses, people are going to transmit in ways that were not helpful and harmful to others. And so we worked hard after a bit of a debacle with fans to actually reopen schools in a way, everybody's laughing, in a way that was really important. And you just heard the superintendent talk about how he took, and the Philadelphia school system with the board, with the unions, with the Congress, took that funding and did two really important things with it. One, fixed whatever infrastructure they could fix because ventilation really matters. I would actually say then air conditions and HVAC really matters as well. But ventilation really matters if you're dealing with respiratory issues. And number two, the academic issues. And I remember being here with President Biden in the start of the 2022-2023 school year, when we worked at and looked at the tutoring programs that were starting at that time, and to hear the fruit of all of those labors, the fruit of the labors of what happened in terms of fixing the schools, the fruit of the labors of our members and principals working with students, both in terms of tutoring as well as the social emotional issues, to try to create that recovery. And to have the two major school districts that get blamed by the right wing repeatedly, Chicago and Philadelphia, to be at the top of that pack, using the funding from the federal government with the amazing staffs that we had to help children recover, that is the amazing story of progress being possible. That's why we know that when we spend money wisely, when we get funds from the federal government and we spend money wisely to actually deal with the issues at hand, that's the confidence that people should have in government actually working well. And so that's part of the reason why I wanted to be here. Is it enough? Of course it's not enough. And in some ways, and Representative Boyle, you actually said it in your history lesson. In some ways, the history of Philadelphia, as well as some of the other urban school districts, show that when you actually try to erect a public school system well before it is required, well before our multi-racial democracy was started in the 1960s, that's with President Johnson and that work that he did. Well before that, those school districts that actually started this work far earlier, generations earlier, they are the ones that are in much more need of infrastructure repair because the schools are old, the pipes are old, the way in which pipes were constructed at that point are problematic now, whether it's lead or whether it's asbestos. So frankly, those who actually tried to do this work for American children in a multiracial way generations ago need more money because they need to actually retrofit their schools. So it is a matter of just common sense and a matter of fairness and frankly a matter of freedom and justice that we would give those who started this work for our children earlier in the history of America, we would give them more. And that's part of why I am here today, to actually make that point. This is a school system that has constantly and consistently said we are going to educate all kids. And when there were all sorts of different experiments, led by people like Jeff Yass and others, the people here who are circling me and their predecessors said, no, regardless of what you do to try to marketize or privatize or any of these other things, we, the educators here, we, the fathers and mothers of this city, we are going to actually do what we can to help all children succeed. And that is why we're also here today, which is it's the first day of school. It's the day it's the day that people have parents walking their kids to school. Kids, the aspiration, the hopes and the dreams are always seen on the first day of school. And what we are trying to do
are the nation's birthplace. And while I have great pride in that, that also means we are really, really old. And so, yeah, of course we have more needs than those Sun Belt cities that have only really been built in the last 2 generations. We are one country. We need Washington, D.C. to step up the plate. As Randy showed, when we did get additional resources, we were able to take full advantage of them, but we need to do more. Now, with that, it is my privilege and honor, someone who also stood with us that day outside Lowell Elementary, to first highlight this issue and why we needed to focus more attention specifically on school buildings and school facilities, and that is the president of the PFT, Arthur Steinberg. Thank you.
We're proving we need everything.
Yeah. Thank you, Congressman. Before I start, I want to introduce some of the other labor leaders that are here, get all their names and affiliations right. John Bynum from 32BJ SEIU. Yeah. Nicole Hunt from Night Here 630. Yeah. Good thing you have your shirt on so I know where you're from. Cafeteria workers and support staff in schools. And Dr. Robin Cooper, the president of CASA Local 502, the Principals Association of Philadelphia. And before I get into the rest of the remarks, which I'll keep brief because I really hate following Randy, I usually, okay. I'm sorry, Bernadette, I did not realize you were here. We also have Bernadette Ambrose Smith, the president of the School Police Association. Sorry. I'll keep this now so I have it. Anyway, back that day at Lowell, what was it, 4 or 5 years ago? We couldn't have held this inside. We were forced to have this event outside. So it is really a point of emphasis to show that all the branches of the government and the school district are working together on this. And we really are grateful for the opportunity to sit down and work with efficiently using the resources that we do get. Congressman Boyle mentioned the PFT app. Just so you folks know, back in the 70s, the PFT started getting involved with the facilities before it became chic and the in thing to do. We spend our own money on this. Okay, this is not taxpayer money. It is money that we get contributed into our health and welfare fund. And we do that for a couple reasons. Number one, the health and welfare of our staff and students is of paramount importance to us. And secondly, our working conditions are kids' learning conditions. So when people mention ventilation, and one of the, I don't want to call it a benefit, but one of the advantages that came out of the COVID pandemic was research for years has shown that ventilation actually has an impact on achievement in education. So 5 to 10% improvement in test scores when you have proper, adequate ventilation. So it really is something that we've been working on for years, and this just kind of helped accelerate it. So anyway, overall, we're grateful for the historic education advancements made by the Biden-Harris administration and delivered by members of Congress, including Congressman Boyle. They mentioned the American Rescue Plan, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act. Stuff had been neglected for way too many years. And because of these good people, we're able to now start getting the facilities that our kids deserve. But there is a lot more to be done. Public schools are the heart of every community and the nexus of it. And they have to be included in federal infrastructure spending. Too many times they've been ignored. This week, many Philadelphia public schools are returning to learning in totally unacceptable situations. We're lucky today. It's not as hot as it's going to be Wednesday and Thursday. Dr. Watlington, Chief Hill, our Deputy Superintendent Hill, I'm sure we're going to be on the phone Tuesday and Wednesday morning seeing, what we're going to have to do in those facilities that are too hot because those temperatures are going to be above that 85 degrees. And it just creates a problem for the staff, the parents. They get their kids off to school and then get a notice that they're going to be dismissed and sent home. They have to scramble to arrange childcare. It just totally discombobulates the learning process, and it's something we really have to go on and fix. So the federal government really has an obligation and a moral conscience to support and strengthen public schools. That is the foundation of the future of this society. I always say, and I didn't coin this, to me, education is the fundamental civil rights issue of our times and always has been. Going back to my other history-certified people, you go back to even, President Johnson and, his war on poverty and the voting rights and getting people jobs and putting money into schools. That was the beginning of this, and we really, are kind of fearful about taking a step back. The pandemic relief funds, as Dr. Watlington pointed out, help support students in the largest, poorest city in the city. Remember that. Philadelphia is the poorest large city in the country. And other studies have shown what's the biggest impediment and obstacle to educational achievement? It's poverty. It's kind of hard to learn when you haven't had breakfast and you don't know if you're going to get lunch, which is why I'm going to applaud our state legislators who are here that all kids get breakfast now. We'd like them to all start getting lunch. So it's really a tribute to the funds that they got in here and the hard work of all of our educators, from the paraprofessionals to the lunchroom staff to the security folks to our teachers, that these scores have improved that much. And it's a trajectory we hope to continue going forward with. We want libraries in every school. I mean, it's really a disgrace that we have like 2 or 3 librarians in this entire school district. But first we have to fix the facilities so that the libraries can handle the books. One thing I want to close with, we talk about the infrastructure. We're also at the mercy of what happens in the rest of the city. And the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act was the start of this. Just this morning, we had to dismiss a school early because a water main broke out front. First day of school, which is joyful, everybody happy, elementary school kids. By 9:30, they're on their way home. This is something that's really unacceptable, folks, and I'm really grateful for the funds that we've gotten so far, and look forward to sitting down with the district going forward to efficiently use the resources we're going to get going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. And next, introduce someone I know very well, like me, born and raised in this neighborhood, and like me, an elected official. He also happened to have been on my staff for 7 years, and we miss him very much. But our loss is Pennsylvania's gain, because he's doing a great deal of work now as a state representative. State Rep Anthony Bellman.
All right, so first I want to say thank you to our soon-to-be chairman of the House Budget Committee, Congressman Brendan Boyle. Can you give him a round of applause? And let's please also give a shout out to the principal, Principal Brown, who does a phenomenal job here at Finletter. My name is State Representative Anthony Bellman, and I'm honored to serve the 203rd Legislative District, which encompasses Alany, Longcrest, Lawndale, and Oxford Circle. And today is the first day of school for many children in Pennsylvania. And it wasn't too long ago that Congressman Boyle and we were walking through a school not too far from here, Lowell Elementary. And as he already referenced, that we saw the real issues that happened in that school dealing with the facilities. We saw the paint chipping. We saw the drastic change in temperature from one classroom to the next. And I'll be honest with you, I wholeheartedly believe that funding public education is the essential issue that we all have to deal with. And it's a public safety issue. It's an economic issue. It's a jobs and a future issue. And it's a moving people out of poverty and into the middle class issue. But one thing it is not, is that it's not a made up issue. We're in a building right here that was built in the 1920s. And it's serious that our children this building is not adequately fit to educate our young people in the 21st century. And after an almost 10-year legal battle in Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth Court found that Pennsylvania was not adequately and constitutionally funding our public education system. So I'm proud to be a state rep, because then we can go all around Pennsylvania and telling everybody what we've done and how we've actually adequately or put a down payment on, we'll say, $1.1 billion in new funding for public education in Pennsylvania. $231 million coming to the school district of Philadelphia. And as the congressman said, for 8 years I used to work with him both in Philadelphia and in Washington, D.C. And every single day I went to go work for Congress, I knew that's where you go in order to make big change, in order to solve big problems. And I thank Congressman Boyle for being here today, because public education and the inadequate funding of public education is a big problem. And the stuff that we've done in the State House, it makes a difference, but we need our federal partners in order to get it done. So thank you, everybody that came here today, and thank you, Congressman Boyle, for leading this effort.
First, let me say, Madam Principal Brown, thank you for having us. I always get a little nervous when the principal's around, but you have a beautiful smile. You seem very nice, so you're putting my nerves at ease. And State Representative Bellman, thank you for those great remarks. And this is a legislative event, so I have to be careful here. But if an election goes a certain way this November, then I would be chair of the Budget Committee. I like to think of myself as the anti-Paul Ryan. So I'll have more to say about that, hopefully in several weeks. But finally, let me bring up our local city councilman here, someone who is also a good friend. The three of us are on a friend's text chain together. It shows you the sort of camaraderie and spirit of unity that we have working here really just trying to do, just attempting to fight the good fight. Because we know that we're right when it comes to this issue. And as we've proven over the last several years, if we work at it, we can truly achieve some good things, and that helps spur us on to do more and finally complete the job. So someone who has the heart for public service, also the intellect, City Councilman Anthony Phillips.
Thank you. Well, I want to say good morning and welcome to Alny. This is a part of all of our districts, Congressman Boyle and State Representative Anthony Bellman. And yes, we are often in intimate conversations about how we can make not only Alny better, but all of our neighborhood schools better when it comes to our children. I also want to give a esteemed shout out to Principal Brown, who we, both Anthony Bellman and I, met with together, and then also Congressman Boyle is continuing to work with us. Work with her. What we're trying to do here, what we've seen here at Finletter, is that this particular school, as she's pointed out, has a lot of great promise. And one of the things that we talked about in this meeting is that we want to continue to find ways to support the infrastructure, even here at Finletter School, which has been a vital part of our vibrant neighborhood. I'm just going to briefly just say something really quickly. One, let me applaud you, Congressman Boyle, for your advocacy and efforts at a federal level to create resources to build educational infrastructure that aligns with our lofty ideals and stated beliefs. And so Philadelphia has many of the nation's oldest school buildings, as many of our folks. Yeah. Yeah, we got to. And what I want to say is that, the reality is that we are the richest nation in human history. We should boast that we have the world's best educational infrastructure. Germany, Switzerland, and our allies around the world send a message that their citizens and their world matters because oftentimes their buildings are much better than ours. But what we are not doing in our nation is making sure that if we're going to continue to invest in what we call human capital, the most precious human capital that we have in our nation are our children. These are going to be individuals that are going to be the innovators for our society in terms of coming up with new ideas as well as new institutions that can really move our city, our state, and our country forward. And that is why this conversation is really important. And as the chair of Philadelphia City Council, vice chair of Philadelphia City Council's Education Committee, these are ongoing conversations that we will continue to have in collaboration with not only our mayor, but also our school superintendent and our unions who are present today, to say that we are working together to make sure that our children have the best. For now, what we've been doing as city leaders is that we've been putting patches on issues. Dr. Walton will tell you that over the years, they've invested the school district millions of dollars in putting patches on different parts of these buildings. But the problem is that it's not fully healed. And until we fully heal every building in the city, we're going to continue to have these issues. So Congressman Boyle is right. This is a federal issue that will help us really tremendously with funding. The federal government will help us with funding to really solve this issue. So thank you to all of you for being here today as we set out to do something really lofty, and that is to make Philadelphia one of the best school districts in the city in terms of infrastructure, in the nation in terms of infrastructure. So let's do this together, and let's do it for the children, because the children is the most important reason why we're here today. Thank you.
Well said. Thank you, Councilman Phillips. And with that, I'm happy to open it up to any questions, either for me or anyone who's gathered behind me. Just one reminder, as this is an official event on the congressional side, if you have any campaign-related questions, I actually am prohibited from speaking about that. I can address it outside of this event. So with that, just I saw you first.
we'll have an announcement coming very shortly today. Thank you.
We cope. Our classrooms are fully air conditioned, but common spaces like this, we do not have air. So our auditorium, our hallways, and our cafeteria, we do not have air. So although our classrooms are air conditioned, we do propose that we are also dismissed early because, of course, we cannot let our students play in the heat, so we are stuck in the school classroom. So we do hope that if there are early dismissals, although